Hi guys, my name is Sukaja. Welcome back to another video. I know it's been a while since I made a video, but I hope you'll be happy with this particular video, which is going to talk about the books that I read in March and also what I've been currently reading. Without further ado, let's get started. So in March I read 3 books. The first of these books is The Vanishing Net binder, and this was a book that was given to me by Bloomsbury, India. The book is basically set in 1945. It is historic fiction set during the World War, and the story centers around a German family of 4 consisting of a mother, her husband and 2 sons, both of whom are sent to fight up north in Germany during the war. And the father is nearing old age, and the mother Etta, she keeps herself busy waiting for her sons to return. What this book does is it highlights Germans and their lives during the war. We learn more about the other side of the story because a lot of books have been written set during the war, but they mainly center around Holocaust and issues relating to that. But there's another side to the story as well, as for every story and event in history there are always 2 sides. In terms of my review, it is the sort of book that I was initially skeptical about because I felt like a book like this could easily go wrong in so many ways. But then I felt like she carried it off pretty well, and the only drawback of this book was that it was kind of a drag towards the end, and there were multiple issues that the narrative deals with where the author could have floundered but managed not to, and this was a good thing. Reading this book and all its dramatic descriptions, I was swept back to a war-stricken Germany, with rubble on the streets and ash-covered fences. I heard the rumbling of the planes and felt the suppressed hunger pangs of Germans who hid in shelters and to escape bomb raids. There were short sentences and shorter chapters which made this book a quick read. Around the middle, it briefly fell flat with too much detail, but once I passed that point, the story moved faster and I was eager to reach the end. However, the end did get to be a bit of a drag. It's somewhat of a compromise if you decide to read this book. It's not completely a cakewalk, so let me say that. But it has a vast scope in that it tries to cover a range of topics from homosexuality to mental illness, disability, old age, war, the loss of innocence, PTSD, nostalgia, motherly love, and much more. So in that, I think that the author was being very ambitious. Maybe it didn't serve the purpose of the novel. It also brings to mind one very important fact, which according to me is that the war created a toxic, vicious circle of sorts that ordinary Germans became a victim of. So it's wrong to say that all Germans were perpetrators during that time. That's one thing that the book is trying to make pretty clear. This war led to the rise of conditions that were very dystopic in nature and made life difficult, full of suffering and fear for the common populace. So the next book that I read in March is Kim Ji-young, born in 1982, by Cho Nam-joo, and this is a book that I read based on the tag on Instagram called Korean March, where you read all books by Korean authors. Kim Ji-young is an ordinary 32-year-old woman living in present-day South Korea. This book charts the course of Ji-young's life from her school years to her adolescence, her first job that was subsequently followed by her marriage, and the book ends when she finally gives birth to her child. So this is to look at the entire span of a woman's life, and at least the formative years and what happens until the point where she becomes mother. Now, the central theme of this book is definitely sexism. Throughout the novel, we see Ji-young encountering harassment at multiple stages of her life and career. We see it impact her and other women time and again in different facets of life, from work to the home and more. It's a close look into sexism. Sorry, I thought there was a bee outside, so I kind of freaked out because I'm really scared of bees. Right. So Ji-young refers to the favoritism with which her mother treated her younger brother while she and her sister were made to do chores around the house. The book creates a world of male privilege, one where men walk with a sense of superiority and entitlement, something that is wholly absent among women in their community. We see a culture that suppresses and devalues its females, granting the males more precedence, and this starts at home. It begins with families and with mothers who refuse to dole out impartial treatment to their sons and daughters. This book is likely to connect with, I think, South Asian audiences, but at the same time, you can read it anywhere you are because sexism is something that is perpetrated in ways seen and unseen in different cultures all around the world. There's also a focus on South Asian cultures that embrace conservatism, and this leads to the thriving of sexism. This story is on point in exposing how inherent sexism is within the system and how prevalent it can be. I like the structure of this book with its simple language and unique style that reads much like a report. If you're somebody who looks at style and form and those are important things for you, then this book is not going to give you any of that. She substantiated her claims with facts. There were footnotes in this book which made a factual report-like. It's basically a quick read and around 200 pages, but the book is not only relevant, it also makes an inquiry into age-old structures and the ways of thinking that are prevalent among people. Basically, I think this was a very thought-provoking read, and it's great for getting the conversation going or coming to understand what it feels for genders to be truly equal and what that means. So I would rate this book 4 out of 5 stars, and if you'd like to read a book by a Korean author who is female, then I recommend starting here. Also about the book that I've been reading since March, I'm also reading Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, and I'm absolutely loving it. While most people might not be interested in what it is for the past of the human race and how that impacts our day-to-day lives, most people might be concerned with the future, but I still recommend reading this because we can only make sense of the future if we have a clear understanding of our past and where we come from and why we are the way we are. Some of the facts in Sapiens are pretty mind-blowing, and I have a lot to say about this book, but I will get back on this in another video where I give you an all-encompassing review of Sapiens. I was also attempting to read this book, The Discomfort of Evening, by Marie Lucas Reinwell. I'm not sure if I pronounced her name right, but this book is very depressing, very dark, and not everyone's cup of tea. It talks about some, juvenile fixations that children have at different ages, and it makes it very dark. It's basically about this girl who's 10 years old who has a tendency to experience the world in a very different way. So this girl is unfortunately made to witness death at that age, and she loses her elder brother, Thais, when he was ice skating. So the death of her brother has a traumatic impact on her, and she really can't come to terms with what death is and what it's all about. So because of that, she starts to do weird things like, taking frogs and putting them in a box and inducing death upon them. She and her sister, they kill the rabbit that they own in their house. They just cut off its whiskers, and this book does not shy away from making the reader uncomfortable by its descriptions, which bring to light certain things like what kids do when no one's watching and things like that. I like the honesty with which it was written. It's definitely a bit of a heavy read. It's not something you can just read in one sitting. It's definitely going to demand that you take time and read it thoroughly, and it's literary fiction, so there's definitely lots to think about, and you can really try and figure out what the author is saying, and there's so many things that might come up in the interpretation. It's dark, it's depressing, it's morbid. If you're not in a good place, don't read this book. A lot of people found this very honest and raw, and they did enjoy this, but I will have to get back to you on this. I read this because I loved the cover, and it's a painting that was done, and this is the character Jazz herself, and it's basically translated from the Dutch. So I was very curious about this, but I might get back to this and make another video where I talk about it, but that's just something else I was reading and have DNF'd. Now the other book that I read is Breaking and Mending by Joanna Cannon, and this is a book that has been sitting on my TBR for the longest time, and it took me such a long time to get to this, but after I finished The Discomfort of Evening, I was in a bit of a slump. Then I decided I'm just going to go and read the books that really mattered and books that I've been wanting to read for such a long time but had been putting off. So I picked up Breaking and Mending by Joanna Cannon, and this is a book about the NHS and doctors working in the NHS and what life is like for those doctors, and how it starts from medical school and the training that they go through for 5 years and how they come out as individuals ready to serve humanity. Now, I will never view doctors in the same light ever again. I have a profound respect for them, and this is all due to the book that I read. The book is a memoir, and it's very honest, it's very raw, and it does get a little morbid in terms of, when she talks about, having to cut a cadaver and what that felt like for the first time. She goes into her own personal experience as being a patient from the other side of the table, not just being a doctor. I liked how Joanna is somebody who's decided to take up medicine and study of medicine at the age of 30. So it was a decision she made later in life, and one that she doesn't regret. The writing is fantastic. Please read it for the writing as well. I would rate this book 5 out of 5 stars and highly recommend it, especially if you like memoirs. If you like Maggie O'Farrell's I Am, then I would recommend you read Breaking and Mending as well. If you're curious about what it's like to be a doctor, work night shifts, experience burnout, and so much more, then please read this book, because you will never see medical science and what it's like being in a hospital. We fail to think about these things. We just go, we get treated, we don't think about what the doctor is actually going through, and how there are things that he's not going to talk about. He or she has been trained to be someone who is very stoic in situations and deliver bad news with expertise and things like that. There's obviously so much that they've gone through, and it's just such an eye-opening read, and if you're curious about the medical profession, you should definitely read this book. I would love to hear your thoughts on any of these books if you've read them. Please let me know in the comment section down below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone you think might find it interesting. I will be back soon with another bookish video. In the meantime, stay safe, stay sane, and I will see you soon. Bye!